A replacement handler took me 11 minutes to set up last year, and by the end of those 11 minutes I had undone the entire reason for the swap. The old phone had a failing battery. I read a new one, walked through the setup screens the way you walk through setup screens, and somewhere near the end Android offered to bring across everything from a device it had noticed on the same account. I tapped yes. Obviously I tapped yes. It is the helpful option and it saves an afternoon. What arrived was the old phone. Same apps, same wallpaper, same saved Wi-Fi list, same settings I had spent a fortnight tuning, and same everything else I had never thought about. The customer got a new handset carrying an old life. I rent out real Android phones, physical Samsung handsets on a shelf in Singapore, each with a carrier SIM in it, driven over the network from wherever the person renting it happens to be. A bit over 100 of them. So I provision these things constantly, and the account question turns up on every single one. An account is not a login. Most people treat the Google account on an Android device as a credential. You type it in, you get the store, you move on with your day. Call it a credential and you will get a fleet wrong. The thing is a join. The moment you sign in, that handset stops being an anonymous object and becomes a row attached to a history. The account knows this device exists. The device knows which account it belongs to. And everything either of them does from that point is filed under the same name. That is the whole idea, and it is genuinely good design for one person with one phone. On a shelf of 100, it is a completely different object. What actually switches on? Sign in and 3 things happen without you agreeing to any of them separately. The device gets registered. There is a list sitting on the account of every device it has seen with model names and rough dates. That list is not hidden and it is not hard to read. Backup switches on. App data, device settings, saved Wi-Fi networks, contacts, all of it starts copying upward on a schedule nobody asked you about. And sync switches on, which is the same machinery running in the other direction, so state already sitting on the account starts arriving on the handset. None of that is buried. All of it is a default, and the setup flow is built so a person can get to a working home screen without ever seeing the toggles. A restore imports identity, not files. I have written before about backing a phone up as an operations job. That is the boring version and it is a good one. What you can genuinely save, what you cannot. How you get a working device back. This is the other half. When you restore a device from a backup, what crosses over is the previous device's identity and the history attached to it. The files are the smallest part of the transfer and the only part anybody looks at. The app list, the settings, the networks it has known. The app data for everything that opted into being backed up, which means those apps wake up on the new handset believing they are still on the old one mid-session with the same local state they went to sleep with. And underneath all of it, the account association, because the restore only exists in the first place because the account already knew about the old device and offered to bridge them. That is the distinction worth holding onto. A restored phone is a continuation of the device you were trying to stop using, wearing a new case. Fresh is a claim about state, not about the box. People say a phone is fresh and mean the seal was intact. A handset out of a sealed box has no history at all, and that is the single most valuable property it has. It is also a property you can spend in about 4 taps. So the useful question on a provision is never is this device new. It is what does this device know, and where did it learn it? A 2-year-old handset, wiped properly, never signed into anything, knows nothing. A brand new handset restored from last month's backup knows an enormous amount. And the restore is offered to you at exactly the moment you are least likely to think about any of this, which is halfway through a setup flow at the end of a long afternoon. 12 phones under one account. Now scale it because the shape of the problem changes when you do. Put 12 devices under one account, and you have not made 12 devices convenient. You have made one estate with 12 limbs. They are visibly one thing. Anyone who can see that account sees all 12, and there is no version of this where they look unrelated, because they are not unrelated. You told the platform they were the same, which is fine when it is true. An internal test fleet belonging to one company genuinely is one estate, and there is nothing to be coy about. It stops being fine when those 12 are doing separate jobs for separate people who have never met. But the part I actually lose sleep over is not who can see what. An account problem is a fleet problem. A single account holding 12 devices is a single point of failure with 12 blast radii. The account picks up a security challenge, a recovery prompt. A password change from somewhere unexpected. A lock because something looked odd at 3 in the morning. That does not land on the account in the abstract. It lands on every device signed into it simultaneously, and you find out because a batch of phones stops working inside the same minute. I have had this. Not 12. A smaller batch I had set up under one operations account because it was faster on the day. A challenge landed and the whole batch went sideways together while I sat there with one phone number and one recovery mailbox, trying to answer for all of them at once. The fix took an evening. The actual lesson took a lot longer, which is that the convenience of one account is entirely front-loaded. You buy an hour during setup and you repay it at the moment nobody gets to schedule. Everything else in that rack is built so one failure costs 1 unit. A dead SIM is 1 line. A dead handset is 1 customer. A shared account is not 1 anything. The 3 positions and what each one costs. There are 3 honest answers here and every one of them takes something off you. First, an account per device. Clean, defensible, and more expensive than people expect. Because an account is never only an account. It needs a recovery path, so a mailbox or a number. It needs somebody to remember it exists. Multiply by 100 and you have quietly built an administrative estate that you now run forever. That cost is a person, permanently, and it never turns up in a hardware budget where you would notice it. Second, no account at all. People dismiss this without testing it. It is my default. Third, an account with the sync toggles deliberately off. The middle path, and where most working fleets actually land. What breaks with no account? Worth being specific, because the fear is bigger than the reality. Without an account, you lose the Play Store. That is the real one, and it is not small. No store installs, no store updates, no store purchases. You lose the account backup, which you did not want, and the device finder, which you might have. A handful of apps refuse to run at all. Almost always things wired tightly into Google's own services. What still works is more than most people assume. Adbead works. Side-loaded APKs install and run. Browsers works. The network stack has no opinion. Automation over Adbead has no opinion. The majority of testing work never notices. So the test is a question about the workload, not about principles. Does this device need to install or update things from the store more than roughly once a month? If no, it does not need an account. And handing it one is a cost you took on for nothing. If yes, it needs an account, and the question becomes which toggles. The toggles are the whole game. When a device does need an account, the account is not what hurts you. The defaults are backup of app data, backup of device settings, Wi-Fi network sync, contact sync, photo upload. Each of those is on unless you turned it off, and each of them is a copy of this device's state going somewhere it can come back from later. Turning them off is about 30 seconds of screens. It is 30 seconds you have to actually spend once per device, and none of it survives a factory reset. So it belongs in the written provisioning routine, or it simply does not happen. I keep it written down rather than remembered. For the same reason everything else on that rack is written down. At 11 at night, I will absolutely tap through a setup flow on autopilot and feel fine about it. The position. Here is the bit people argue with me about. Accepting the default setup flow on a fleet device is a decision. It does not feel like one. It feels like getting the phone working. Those defaults were designed for a person with one phone who is upgrading and wants continuity, and they are extremely good at that job. Continuity is the thing the flow is optimized for, start to finish. A rack handset wants the opposite. It wants discontinuity. It wants to know nothing about the phone that came before it and nothing about the phone sitting beside it. So on a fleet, every default in that flow points the wrong way, and tapping through it is choosing the wrong answer 4 times in a row without registering that you were asked, where I am guessing the limit, and it is a genuine one. I can read what the setup flow offers and what the toggles claim. I can watch how a device behaves and form an opinion about it. What I cannot see is what any given app or platform actually reads from that state, or how much weight it puts on any of it. Nobody outside those companies can, and anyone selling you the exact recipe is selling you something. So I do not run this as a theory about what is detectable. I run it as a rule about what I hand over. I control the state a device carries. I have no control at all over what somebody else makes of it. That is a much smaller claim than the one people want from me. and it is the only one I can stand behind. What the routine looks like now: SIM in, network up, check the IP, skip the account. The setup flow makes skipping deliberately unattractive and you have to want it. Sideload the tools over Edbit. Then, only if the job genuinely needs the store, add an account for that one device. Kill the sync toggles in the same sitting before anything has time to upload, and write down which account went where, and never take the restore offer. Not once, not on a quiet day. A replacement device gets built, not inherited, and the afternoon that cost me is the afternoon that makes the swap mean anything at all. If you want Android handsets on real Singapore hardware, provisioned by somebody who thought about this before you asked, everything is at cloud.one. Subscribe for more on running phone infrastructure honestly.